Hi, I'm Jim Gosart. I'm Vice President of Republicans Overseas.
And I'm John Richardson, working with Republicans overseas.
Today, we want to talk about the impact on Americans living abroad who are saving for retirement by making use of one of the many retirement plans, savings accounts, and pension plans around the world. There's a lot of variation to this depending on what country you live in. But John, how does the IRS treat Americans living abroad who have been saving for in one of these types of retirement accounts?
Well, Jim, I think the short answer to your question is very suspiciously, because, you're an American living outside the United States and, you got a job and, there's some kind of a company pension plan or something like that. And, that's not going to meet the requirements, the U.S. requirements for a tax deferred, pension, etc. So, I mean, the first problem is that there's no guarantee that your non-U.S. pension or a tax-favored account or any one of these things has tax-deferred status from a U.S. point of view, right? I mean, the way pensions work is you contribute, you're not taxed on the growth, and then, you live long enough, it's going to be distributed, okay? And, in many countries, it's going to be taxed. In other countries, perhaps not so much, but there's great uncertainty about how these things are taxed by the IRS for U.S. citizens abroad. And what's fascinating about it is that in many cases, the answer will depend on the tax treaty that the United States has with that particular country. So, for example, Canada and the U.S. have a fairly modern, one of the better tax treaties, which provides pretty much, leaving aside the technicalities, that a pension for a University of Toronto professor, for example, is probably going to have tax deferred status in the United States. In other words, it's going to behave, the way you would hope it would behave. But what if you're in a country like, say, Brazil, where there's no tax treaty? It's the tax treaty that provides for the deferral. Or, in Australia, we have, of course, the superannuation program, which is a fantastic thing for Australians. Great uncertainty about how that's taxed by the United States. I mean, does the treaty apply, et cetera. So what you have is a situation where, it's amazing, Jim, that the whole purpose of, retirement planning, pensions, tax deferred accounts is to allow people to feel secure, no anxiety, and know that they're doing the right thing by responsible financial planning and retirement planning. They're taking care of their families. But for a U.S. citizen living outside the United States and many places of the world, because, and only because, of the U.S. citizenship taxation regime, retirement planning, pensions, it's fraught with anxiety. Not only do people not know how they're taxed, but there's the whole reporting issue. And will they get a penalty, for things they can't understand? So what we have currently around the world is a very complex set of laws that nobody understands. The only thing that's definite is the penalty. And these are high penalties, right? They can be like a third of the value of the thing. The penalty's definite, but what you're being penalized for, nobody really knows. It's an outrageous situation, absolutely outrageous. And,
Well, and it's crazy because when you think about it, so every country, of course, should and does have their own system for whether they're going to have either a mandatory some countries like Hong Kong, Singapore have mandatory savings. Other countries, it's voluntary. Then you have the types of pension plan that might exist from a government entity. If you work for the government, might have a pension that could exist if you're in the private sector. But you got such a huge variation in the types of pension plans that exist around the world. And yet, if you're an American citizen, you're dependent on that tax treaty, totally dependent on whether you can have a secure safe, worry-free planning for your own retirement.
That's right. I mean, these U.S. tax laws have turned activities that are supposed to be anxiety reducing activities in life into one of the biggest worries they have. Oh my God, is the IRS going to take a third of my pension? I mean, this stuff, you can't make this stuff up. And, for example, next month there's a hearing, the Treasury's having a hearing on certain aspects of this. And, to me, the solution is obvious, that these things should not be in any way negatively impacted by, the U.S. tax laws. I mean, why should just the fact that you were born in the United States disable you from the normal anxiety-reducing activities that citizens of every other country in the world have? And what is it about American citizenship that means you have to put up with so much worry?
And really, the only solution here, John, is to end citizenship-based taxation, and this is why we and Republicans overseas, that's where we stand. We firmly believe and we advocate for the full repeal of citizenship-based taxation, because really, John, it's the only solution. Otherwise you have the IRS has to continuously keep up all these different pension plans around the world, and the American citizens living abroad are just continuously subjected to just way too much certainty. You got to go to a system that the rest of the world practices and just end citizenship-based taxation. It's really the only solution.
That is the only solution. But, I just had this image while you were talking. Let's imagine you've got some executive, who is about to be sent outside the United States, and he's a choice of two countries. And all of a sudden the question becomes, well, will I be allowed to have a pension plan if I go to this country? I mean, this is madness. It is madness.
It is. It is, John. Well, that's where we stand, John. Citizenship-based taxation has got to be repealed.
Yeah, the cancerous tumor has got to be removed, Jim.
Thank you, John.